I just want to share with you where I'm heading next with the research. I feel very honored, and I feel like what an incredible opportunity to do a study involving professional engineers and to really look at, how we navigate ethical dilemmas within the engineering profession. So I want to continue studying engineers, and I specifically want to look at something that's missing in the literature on ethics and ethical leadership, right? So when we study ethics, and the way we've done this for a long time in organizations, is we look at the individual. So you've got Clint Eastwood there to represent the individual, rugged individual. And we look a lot at ethical leaders. And so I think in the research, we tend to lose sight of the collective process of ethical decision making. And we don't really account for the influences that we have on each other, that we have on our peers. If you look at a lot of literature on ethical decision making in an organization, it's as if everybody just looks to the leader to decide what to do. And that's part of what they're thinking, part of what they're doing. But a lot of that is happening within their team as well, right? So my intent is to kind of broaden our understanding. So I published a paper last month just looking at the concept of ethical followership and saying that it's pretty telling that we really look very closely in the research at what leaders do and how they influence followers. What we don't do is look closely at what followers do. If they receive an unethical directive, if it's hinted that they should do something unethical, if they're just feeling pressure to act in a way that conflicts with their internal moral standards, right? What do followers do? And so that's where in the definition that I offered, and this is still something I need to work through and refine, but it talks about that influencing that we do upward, right? How we might influence our leader, how we influence our peers to support or to encourage ethical conduct. And the four behaviors that identify are commitment, right? So committing to work with an ethical leader or an ethical team, right? Being explicit about trying to build those relationships. Refusal, right? So that's where whistleblowing fits in, right? Whistleblowing is a good example of refusal. Negotiation, right? So taking that unethical directive or taking that directive that might in some way implicate some ethical questions and trying to find a compromise, trying to find a way to work, still serve that interest, but to find the right way to do it. Which I think of that in our safety discussion, right? We might have to pause, we might have to assess the hazards and assess the best way to do this, but we can do it. We can negotiate this instead of just skipping right through. And then reflective practice, which is really more about how followers ask questions that others are not asking, right? You're not out and out refusing, you're not trying to negotiate, you're just saying, hey, have we thought about X, Y, and Z, right? So again, just trying to flesh out those behaviors that followers practice, right? Because it's not well reflected in the literature. So I've got a couple of studies that I'm looking at. One is asking engineers about their experiences dealing with an ethical dilemma, and especially if they had an unethical directive. Now, it's not important for the sake of these interviews to explore what they were directed to do, who directed them to do it, all that kind of like more sensitive information. But I will ask folks, how did you respond to that? What was your thought process? Really looking at at their behaviors and what led them to make that decision, right, to respond. And then, of course, we love scales in academia. You saw a list of scales that were used in this study. And truly, for me, it's important to develop a scale for ethical followership to be able to measure it. Because we've had a scale for ethical leadership that is, it's quoted all over the place. It's cited everywhere. And it's been around for 20 or 25 years, right? We don't have a scale to measure ethical followership, to really be able to evaluate, do we have ethical followers in our organization? Can we count on folks if we've got and so to get back to our question about if we've got an unethical leader, right? Then as an organization, we're kind of counting on our followers to step up and do the right thing, or at least draw attention and report their concerns, right? So we need to know what ethical followers do, how they think. We need to know how we can support them. And we've talked about some good examples, I think, of how to do that. But that's what I'm looking at. The reason I want to establish a scale is so we can actually measure and evaluate ethical followership. So that's where I'm headed. And I want to say thank you to everybody. This has been a great discussion. And I really especially appreciate, it's not every session that we really task you to brainstorm and to identify some things we can do differently in our organization. So I appreciate that very much.